Welcome to the Creative Right Now podcast, a podcast designed to help you elevate your craft as I sit down with industry professionals, published authors, and working writers, where we will talk about key insights, industry learnings, and things to really help you become a better writer. Today, we're going to be chatting about developing characters with disabilities and LGBT themes as I sit down with published author WriteHollyDavis, and we're really going to have a great discussion. So if you want to learn more, make sure that you stick around. And at the end of the interview, after the podcast, we're actually going to be doing a live writing exercise. So make sure that if you have your creative juices and you're like, hey, I need to write something today, you're going to be able to write with both Holly and myself, as we're going to be doing a live free write game using ChatGPT. So stick around till the end and that will be fun. All right, let me hop into the comments real quick. Jennifer, welcome to the stream. Heather, welcome. Glad to have you here over from Holly's YouTube. Remy, welcome, my friend. Happy Pride Month. Happy to see all y'all. And Marta, welcome. Slavic person here, feeling a controversial topic. Marta, you're going to be starting our comments from the peanut stand over here. So I am so glad to have all of you here, and we're going to be hopping right into it. So today I get to sit down and chat with WriteHollyDavis. For those of you who don't know, for my audience, WriteHollyDavis is a middle grade and young adult fantasy author. She hosts the Diversity is Lit book club, created the Happy Balanced Writer Workbook, and judges the Page Turner Awards Young Writer Award. On her YouTube channel, WriteHollyDavis, she offers writing sprints and advice. Her new book, A Diamond Bright and Broken, is a Tangled retelling with empowering female characters, LGBT representation, family secrets, and much, much more. It is set to be released with her digital publishing house, Inimitable Books, later this year. Please join me in welcoming WriteHollyDavis to the stage. Welcome, Holly.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And let me give you the round of applause. Holly, thank you for joining me today. I've been so looking forward to this interview and looking forward to sitting down and talking about LGBT and like disability type characters. There's a lot of themes and values that I totally resonate with. And even as I've like hopped into your live streams and I've seen how you interacted with your community, I totally love what you have going on.
Thank you. Likewise for you too.
So before we get into it, it looks like we have more of our community hopping in. Fluffy, welcome to the stream. Heather, once again, happy Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, my friends. This was the perfect thing to talk about for Pride Month. How many of you are writing LGBT characters? We're going to be actually jumping into that shortly. Fluffy, welcome to the stream. John, welcome. And Bethany, welcome to the stream. Yeah, Holly, my audience has started making fun of me because I always say welcome so many times. So I'm just like going to make it a thing and give everyone like 2 to 3 welcomes, apparently.
I love that. Like I say, hi, hello, hey, ya.
It's usually because I have catitude.
Oh, I love it. I'm all about the cats. Cats
oh, I love cat. Unfortunately, my cat just like hates people and can't stand anybody. But she loves me, so that's what counts. Hey, what's up? Self Pub with Andy. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. So, Holly, let's get right into it. And actually, right before I say that, I forgot to add, if you're watching this on the replay, we got you covered. Time codes get added to the stream at the end of the podcast, so you can actually hop to the part of the video that brings you the most value. All right. And with today's format, so as a live podcast, you're going to be encouraged to ask questions. If there's anything you want to know about Holly, I was like, make sure I'm pointing to the right side of the screen. About Holly, I was like, there we go.
I know.
So if there's anything you want to know about Holly, about writing characters with either disabilities or LGBT themes, drop those questions. I'll pop up some questions throughout the stream, and we'll hold other questions for the Q&A segment at the end. So keep your questions coming because we want to help you become better writers. But Holly, my real question is, and this is this is probably the reason everybody's here. What is your secret to creating a believable character?
So hopefully this isn't too much of a secret, but how I make my characters believable is by making them relatable. Even though they are fantasy characters in a fantasy world, they still need to feel relatable, and that is by like drawing off of real life experiences. They don't necessarily have to be your own, but if you like hear something funny that someone says, or you read online about something someone did, then you can use that for your characters and make them feel real because those are things that actually happened.
That totally goes to that idea of like, write what you know. Right. So it's like, if I'm going to write a character who's like super funny, then maybe I'll draw inspiration from like my best friend who's super funny.
Yes.
I think the challenge that I always pose to myself when I'm like using my experience is then how do I create characters who like experience things that I've never experienced?
Yeah.
Clearly there's certain traumas I've never dealt with, but how would I create a character that's experienced like this really intense trauma in a way that's believable?
Yeah, I think like for, they may have gone through a trauma that you haven't, but the emotions that they're going to feel and their reactions to that are probably things that you have done in different situations. So, you can imagine that like, oh, well, I've never had, been in a battle before, but I've gotten in a really heated argument, or something like that,
No, I absolutely love that because obviously not every reader is going to have experienced all these different types of like turmoils and struggles, but everyone has experienced love, hate, happiness, all that, these core emotions. So tying the character journey into these core emotions absolutely makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I
Do you,
love the emotion thesaurus too, because it helps you bring that out when you're writing. Otherwise, like the reader's not going to feel that on the page. But if you're like bringing out the emotions through their actions, so you show it and not tell it, then that's what draws them in and makes them like buy into the character being real.
the emotion thesaurus? I don't actually know what this is. I feel like I'm about to learn something new today.
I think I have it close to me here. Yeah, there's a whole series
The
by
emotion thesaurus, a writer's guide to character expression.
yeah, and there's a whole series by Angela Ackerman and Becca
Okay.
Puglisi.
Mhm.
But like, because you could say like, oh, they're angry. Instead, you could say
Mhm.
like they furrowed their brows and stomped their feet.
Mhm.
And then to make sure, because a lot of times like I'll use the same thing like, oh, there's a pit in my stomach, or like a gut, like an anvil in my gut or something. But what's another way of saying this emotion? So I'm not using that same phrase over again. So this is
That
one that really helps.
that's really interesting. Does it give you, like, different types of word choice and different, like, things that are attached to certain emotion? Or does it more describe, like, these are 10 different ways of being angry?
Yeah, so for example, like there's guilt. It has the physical signs and
Mhm.
behaviors, internal
Okay.
sensations, mental responses, acute or long-term responses for the emotion, and signs that this emotion is being suppressed, and like power verbs that are associated with it. So it like really kind of goes through a whole thing. So you can say, well, the character's acting like this because they're guilty, and now they're thinking this because they're guilty, and now 5 days later this is what they're going to do because of the guilt. So
Interesting. So it kinda gives you, like, a whole, like, through line or through line of, like, an emotional journey from beginning to end.
yes,
I
Yeah.
actually kind of like that. That's actually really.
Yeah, I love that because
What's the book called? I'm gonna have to write that
yes.
down. It's such a great
Yeah,
resource.
the
The
emotion
Emotion
thesaurus.
Thesaurus. So definitely, if you're here in the audience right now, if you're ever struggling with like writing believable emotions, or you feel like your characters are always angry or sad, it sounds like this is a great resource for you. So definitely worth checking out. Now, we have so much that we want to hop into today, and I have so many questions for you, Holly, about creating characters with LGBT themes and disabilities. Which
Yes.
we have like 2 conversations in our short period of time. But before we get into that, why don't you share with the audience who may not be aware of who you are, a little bit about who you are, your journey, and how they can find you.
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm Holly Davis. You can find me as WriteHollyDavis everywhere. I'm a physical therapist by day and a writer by night, so I do have
Ooh,
a full-time
superhero by
job.
day, writer
Yes.
by night. I like that. Just a little flex there.
No, no, no. But yeah, so, I try to write in all the free time I had. I originally, well, I wrote like ever since I was like 6 years old, just like writing like the first chapter of a story and I'd never finish it. Writing books with my sister. And then we started writing fan fiction in high school.
Mhm.
Um, and then it wasn't until 2015, after I had like gotten a big girl job, that I returned back to the novel that I had started writing and was like, oh, I should finish this. And I found a NaNoWriMo, and that's when I started back into my writing journey. And like, I've never looked back from there. Because once I
So
finished,
NaNoWriMo got you on the journey?
yes, I found that. And I was like so grateful because like once I started writing it, I was like, well, what do I do now that it's done? Like, what do I do? And
Like
so
you got
that's
a
when,
whole year. Yeah, okay.
yeah. So that's when I learned about like, oh, editing and querying and literary agents and the different avenues of publishing,
Mhm.
all of that. And that's kind of what brought me along to where I am today with now being published or almost being published, but at least having a book deal. And that's the short of it. I could go much longer.
And we can always go on to like the whole journey. But
Yes.
that was so cool though, that's how that NaNoWriMo was such a huge influence. I'm just curious. Like I know I want to hop into your book process in a little bit
Yeah.
with your book that's coming out. I'll make sure I don't butcher it. A Diamond, Bright and Broken.
Yes.
Did you start writing that during NaNoWriMo, or was that written outside of it?
That was during it was
That is so
NaNoWriMo
cool.
2020.
So cool.
Yes.
And that just goes to show you. So anybody who's here in the whether you're watching through the live or the replay, like write your book, start your book in NaNoWriMo. Whether or not you hit the goals or not, the challenge is just to write and like can become a published book at some point. That is so cool. I absolutely love hearing that.
Thanks. Yeah, there's lots
And
of people like Marissa Meyer. I think she
mhm,
started writing Cinder during NaNoWriMo.
interesting.
And so
So
there's a
is that
lot
a
of
thing?
authors.
I feel like with myself and NaNoWriMo, like I've always known about it, but having worked in customer service myself for the past 10 years before I finally like quit customer service to start this writing business. As y'all know, October through December is the busiest time of the year in customer service.
Oh,
And being a manager of people, I was never able to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go write a 50,000 word book this month. I was like, yeah, let me request a month off to go write a book.
oh
That's going to pay
no.
the bills for sure.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, the timing didn't line up.
So, but now I'm in this like position where I get to do research with about more about NaNoWriMo and about the culture this year. And this
Mm.
year will probably be my first valiant attempt at NaNoWriMo.
Yay.
I
That's
don't know what I'm
exciting.
going to write, but I feel like I'm going to have to do something incredible. I just don't know what it will be yet. I try to think of like, okay, are there any challenges that I can be? I'm like, all right, I'll go like the most word challenge. And then I looked, you want to know what the highest word challenge or the highest amount of words written for NaNoWriMo?
I am so scared to know.
All right, this is actually a really great question. That's just random fact. If you're here in the stream or you're here in the chat, take a guess. How many words do you think is the most words ever written during the month of NaNoWriMo? drop it in the chat. I'm curious if anybody else knows, because I Googled this a couple of days back when I was researching, and my mind was blown. My
Well,
mind was, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that in
for
a month. I'm not that cool.
for
We
a
got a
hint,
couple. We got Remy was guessing 300K. Okay. Juanita was saying 85K. Okay, getting a little closer. Heather, we got 100K. John is going 50K. Like, right? 50. So 50K
right.
is like the standard, right? That's the one to complete NaNoWriMo.
Yes. As a
Holly, how many words do you think? What's your guess?
Well, so I do know that I do have friends who have done what they call double and triple nano. So I'm gonna guess 230K.
Okay, so your bet is on 230K. Let's say Jennifer is guessing 250K. Maybe that's just like one of the strategies of like, all right, if somebody guessed like the highest number, I'm gonna guess the highest number plus one.
Right.
Author Pat Ani, welcome to the stream, by the way, from Facebook. Welcome. 77K. Okay. The highest amount of words ever written in a single month, so this is 30 days, is 3 million. 3 million words was the record that was set. I forgot the guy's name. The original record was 1.4 million in like early NaNoWriMo, and then the record was broken about, it was like 5 or 6 years ago at 3 million.
What?
And like it was broken down. Like you essentially have to write nearly, it's like 50,000 words a day or some like crazy number.
How?
And I mean, that's basically like you're sitting down and the only thing you're doing is writing every single day for 30 days, with maybe the exception to go take bio breaks and go like maybe get food, but like that's the way to do it. 3 million words.
Oh, no way.
So no, I like read that and I'm like, yes, Kauffman is not attempting that challenge in November.
Yeah. Now is his like, did they like, they must have plotted like every single scene of their like 10-book series,
I mean,
so that they were able to write it so
It
easy.
didn't say whether it was quality or not. It just said that they had 3 million words, right? They broke the record.
Got it.
So I was like, whew, I had to throw that out there. John cracks. We have some really funny comments. And it was like, did he sleep? Probably not. Sleep after the 30 days, just write. He's probably like at like a typewriter, just like typing away like the monkey at a typewriter. And John's here is like, what breed of chimpanzee did that? I'm like, a good question. Maybe it was a speech to text thing. Possible. Yeah, I don't know if they shared what it was that they used. But yeah, I just had to throw that out there. That like blew my mind. And by the way, welcome to the stream, Neil. It's great to have you here, my friend.
Oh, yay.
So with that little like FYI tidbit out of the way, if you ever struggle with NaNoWriMo, just know that like people have done crazy things before. So like don't get down on yourself if you don't finish your word counts. Okay. So as I think about the next section, before we hop into the topic, I'm actually really curious, so that way we can help out our writing community. What's your core philosophy as a writer?
For me,
about like character development, story development, like is there like a core belief that you have?
Well, I guess there's like a couple core beliefs with writing. I think is
awesome.
like finding what works for you, because there's a lot of advice out there, like plotters versus pantsers. How many beta readers do you get? Do you get an editor after this draft or this draft? And you have to find what works for you, and that might be different with every book that you write. Because I used to be like, for example, I used to be the like 5 a.m. writers club, writing in the morning before work. When I was working on that novel, trying to finish after coming back from not writing. And I was writing in the morning, I was writing at lunchtime, I was writing when I got home from work. It was crazy. And I have not been able to do that since then. So I've been like a night owl, I've been an early bird. And so like even I'm not consistent with like my processes. So I think being flexible with your process is what's going to help you get through your writing and not trying to force anything. And then also I just feel like having a community is also really important because I would not be where I am today if I was doing this all by myself. I would have given up a long time ago. So having people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can have accountability with, like being on live streams. So I think those two things are what's gotten me to where I am.
I absolutely resonate with both those, Holly. I think that both those are amazing ideas and philosophies. I know for like consistency, I always try to tell writers, like, figure out how much time you actually have to write a week and then be realistic.
Yes.
You're not going to write the same amount that a best-selling author is, that many are, because that's probably like what they're doing for a living. If you have a 40-hour a week job, you probably have a family, maybe you're a student out there, like how much time do you actually have to write? And be kind to yourself. And think about like, okay, I'm going to take a year to write this. If I do 2 to 3 sprints a week, like you'll get there. Enjoy the process. I'm all about like, I'm of the weird belief, Holly, that I think every single part of the writing process is fun.
Oh my God, you're crazy.
I'm a weirdo. I'm a weirdo. And I'm going to prove that in by live streaming the entire process every single day.
You're a wizard.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's because so many writers get stuck, especially in the editing process of like, okay, they switch to editing brain. It's boring. It's no longer fun. But there's a way to make it fun. It takes work though. You have to be intentional with if I'm thinking of my writing process, and I'm thinking of when I write my story and what's that emotional thing that I'm doing when I'm writing, you have to take that same emotional core philosophy and instill it in the editing process.
I love that. Yeah, maybe I will enjoy developmental editing a little bit more with my sequel by like taking on that philosophy, because I really resonated with you saying like be kind to yourself, because I always like have my self-imposed deadlines, and you know, I'm not kind to myself sometimes, but then I think like, well, that's not what I would say to my sister or my friend who's writing and asking for help, or you know, too exhausted to write today. So I think that will help me in the developmental phase, because that's my toughest one, because you know, I worked so hard on the first draft, and then I'm like, I gotta do work, and of course writing is editing, you know. Or what's that quote?
Writing is rewriting.
Writing
we could
is
literally rewrite our stories until the end of time. Like,
yes, so
we could keep rewriting our things. That would never stop.
So I'm gonna try to make that fun.
And I also think that our communities are huge, so important. Like, for any of you who are here from my community, like, I appreciate you so much just in this live stream process. I don't want to write every single day. I'm not like, there's days where I'm focused on other things, and out of 160 or so days of live streaming now, I would say probably about 10-15% of those days I like did not feel like writing. I was not feeling it, but I still showed up. And because of my community, like, they would just like help inspire me. And like, they pulled me out of my funk, and I'm like, wow, that's actually really cool.
Yay.
That's actually really cool. So it's such a cyclical process. It really is.
Nice.
Oh, Heather, thank you. You're a wizard. We're all wizards here. We're all magicians. It's just figuring out the systems that work for us. So with that being said, let's hop into it. What is your process for developing a character with a disability? In my own writing, I don't think I've ever developed characters with like a true disability. I don't think it's something that I've tried to yet. So I'm actually really curious to learn what your process is.
Yeah. So in A Diamond Bright and Broken, that was the first time I ever wrote a character with a disability. So it was new to me too.
Okay.
Like I said, everything changes. Everything's different with each draft. You keep learning and growing. But that was, for me, it was like the core behind my main character's like arc, her goal, her motivation was that, you know, she's crying these diamonds to pay for her ill sister's treatments.
And I'm curious, what is her sister's disability exactly?
So because we're in a fantasy world,
Mhm.
it's very generic in the book, like
Okay.
a neuromuscular disorder. I think that's what we call it. But
Okay.
it is based off of muscular dystrophy, which is
Yeah.
really
Okay.
actually more prevalent in males. But I wanted to write her with a sister. So I think first you need to think about like what kind of disability you want this character to have.
Okay.
So I knew with my character, I wanted it to be something that was going to affect her physically because
Okay.
I haven't read anything where a character is using a wheelchair or crutches or anything like that. Um,
Yeah, I don't.
so
I
it's
don't think
very
I think it's
rare.
only been maybe like some nonfiction books with characters with autism. I've read there's
Hmm.
been a couple of those ones, but like a character that's leads a functioning life, but with a very real disability. That's interesting. What
Yeah,
and with muscle with so you said it's
muscular dystrophy.
muscular dystrophy.
Hmm.
So for any of our audience who doesn't know what it is specifically beyond something to do with the muscles, what is that?
Yeah, so it's a genetic disorder.
Okay.
So there's like something wrong in their genetic code that causes them to have breakdown of the nerves that go to the muscles.
Okay.
So then their muscles get weaker. Um, it affects the nerves that go to the organs. So their lungs can get weaker, their hearts can get weaker, and it's progressive, so it can get worse over time.
Okay.
Um, but that was kind of like the play off of what Cadence's sister Allegra has. Um, and when you were talking about not being able to not reading a lot other than like nonfiction books,
Mhm.
I actually just posted our July book of the month poll for Diversity is Lit, which we're mostly on Goodreads.
Ooh, okay.
But most of the books that I posted on there. So July is Disability Pride Month, and most of the books are like contemporary books
Mhm,
because that's where a lot of the people have disabilities, and there's not as many fantasy novels with disability representation. And
mhm.
I had found that through the past couple years of having this book poll for Disability Pride Month. So that's when I realized like I want to have that representation in my book because I don't see that. And as a physical therapist, I was like, I just thought that would be so cool. And I also have like a physical therapist in the book. They're called
Mhm.
physio healers. So that's kind of a play off
I
of
love
that.
that. I love it. So you
Yes.
get to kinda, like, represent, like, your profession through
Yes.
this, like, kinda cameo class. I actually that's really cool, actually.
Yeah. So that's
How,
where I put myself in it too, because I'm like, I've never read a physical therapist in a fantasy book, but
I
like
don't think I have
people get
either.
injured in the wars. Like, who's taking care of the injured people?
I think in fantasy books, that tends to be like there's usually like a healing character, or it's usually a
Hmm.
spell.
Yeah.
It usually ends up being a spell that's part of a greater magic system.
Right.
I'm, like, trying to think of if I've ever heard, but I don't think that's clever, that's awesome.
Hmm.
How
And I
how do
think,
you, how does the character journey, or how does it feel believable though for that, specific disability? So let's say anybody else who has muscular dystrophy
mhm.
can relate and resonate with it.
Yeah. So when I wrote like all of the scenes with Allegra in it, I wrote it from like my outside lens of treating patients like that and what she may encounter in the fantasy world.
Mhm.
But I hired a disability reader, like a sensitivity reader,
Okay.
who happened to be my friend, but she has disability reader services. So just like
Mhm.
there's sensitivity readers for, LGBTQ representation, um, or POC characters. There are disability sensitivity readers. And
Okay.
so I wanted to make sure that I represented her correctly and that she had a strong arc. And I actually, because I didn't want to be offensive, I
Of
didn't
course, right? And
want
that can
to,
happen with writers sometimes. Even
yes.
the best intentions, we can still write something that could offend a greater base out there. Mhm.
Yeah, because I'm like, this is not own voices. I am not writing this from my own perspective. And so I can't know exactly everything that this character in a wheelchair is going to go through.
Mhm.
And so that's like the biggest thing for me is spend the money and hire a disability reader,
Mhm.
because they're going to find things that and bring things up that you didn't even think about. And you're going to go, your book is going to be out there and not be offensive, and your person with a disability is going to be represented properly. My person who I did hire is Vanessa Marie, if anyone is
Mhm.
interested. She
Okay.
actually has a directory that
Awesome. And
has
you said her name is Vanessa Marie, and she's a
yes.
disability/sensitivity reader?
Yes. So there's things
Awesome.
like with depression, a whole bunch of disabilities, hearing loss,
Mhm.
different physical disabilities.
Mhm.
Someone has fat representation, emigration. So alcohol or drug addict. So I'm gonna post that in the private chat if you want to. I don't know if it's gonna let me
Yeah, give it to me, in the private
post
chat, and I'll
that.
drop it here in our chat. I think that's
Yes.
very helpful. So if any of
Yeah.
you are looking for a sensitivity/disability reader,
Mhm.
it sounds like Vanessa is
Mhm.
a recommendation over here. So it sounds like that you get a
Mhm.
sensitivity/disability reader once the story's written or once you're a couple drafts in.
Yes.
Um, and you yourself sounds like you have some experience clearly in your profession.
Right.
What does that research process look like for somebody who's maybe writing a disability for something that they've never experienced? They've
Yes.
never had any life experience. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So what I did is I went on like reputable sites like the Mayo Clinic,
Mhm.
um, sites like that. Like even Wikipedia does have, I think Wikipedia is reputable at least.
Wikipedia does have reputable. You just
At
have to
least
double check sources,
yes,
but
yeah,
Wikipedia is reputable.
yes. But using that to research, like, okay, when does this affect, how does this disability affect the person? How does this disability come about? Like for muscular dystrophy, it's genetic. So, a family member would have it. But maybe it's something that does your character become blind over time? And it was like a inflammation of their, optic nerve or something. So they used to be able to see and now they can't, or they lost their eye. So like how did they get their disability? And then seeing like what are the treatments? Is it just medications? Are there any treatments for it?
Mhm,
Is this a disability that I'm so speaking more towards like physical disabilities? Is it something that
mhm,
progresses where it will lead to death? Does it shorten their lifespan? And if it is more of like a mental disability, like reading up on that too, the treatments, how do they cope with it? So that when you're writing their thoughts and their actions, from the emotion the source, well, is your character with autism actually going to, have those same behaviors as what you're
mhm.
putting in there? So kind of fact checking it that way.
Yeah, and I see in the comments, John brought up a really good point. In like people who have disabilities can get so taken advantage of in our
Yes.
world, right? So then the challenge we have as writers, and maybe this is a question for you,
Mhm.
is how do I create a character where it feels that the adversity that they deal with, whether it's through their own obstacles or whether it's through the way that they're treated because of
Mhm.
their disability, how does that feel like realistic?
Right. And I think
Mhm,
it's finding that balance because yes, this character has this neuromuscular disorder. She's in a wheelchair most of the time, but that
mhm,
isn't her main identity. She is,
mhm,
she is not, muscular dystrophy. She is a strong female who loves to read and loves her family and also
mhm,
has this disability. So I think that helps when you're writing. And I think, yeah, like seeing those challenges. So with Allegra in the wheelchair, you know, is there a ramp into this home?
mhm.
There people
Thinking like
usually
things
write
like that, yeah.
stairs, eh,
Mhm,
so I had to think about that. So really like seeing it from the lens of the person. And maybe there are interviews, like diversity interviews that you can watch on YouTube from people who have that disability, so you can get that perspective, and then, you know, and those services that they can give you that input.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice. I think of it, I think of like if I was going to write a character with a specific disability, if there's a character with if it's a pre-existing disability, is the specific thing, is it something that currently defines them?
Yes.
Like if somebody just lost like one of their eyes, right? You have a character who has the one eye, like that's probably going to define them for a while. As compared to if someone was born blind in one eye, that's a part of their overall overarching identity.
Right. And I think like making sure that you are consistent across things to see like, hey, well, this is going to affect them in this way, that maybe when someone looks at them, they're looking awkwardly because they're like, oh, do I just look at your one eye, or do I look straight? You know what I mean? So it's like, you really have to think about how is this going to affect this person, or how might other people react to this, and how does that change the story? And I think, like you said, like, is this their identity? Like, what kind of story do you want to tell? Because Allegra is a secondary, you know, character, but so, you know, she's not the main POV, but is that what her story is all about? Like, is this a fantasy story about like overcoming the adversity of, you know what I mean? So I think that finding that
totally
balance is important to make sure that they are their own person, and they still have their own goals and motivations and likes and dislikes as well, to make them feel fully fleshed out.
That totally makes sense. And I think that's a really good point you make. I would say that it's the type of character journey someone's going through. If it's your protagonist, that's going to be explored differently in the novel or in your story, as compared to if it's a supporting character with a disability.
Yes.
Not that it's more or less important in the overarching in our overarching views and philosophies, but in the core of the story, it's how does it affect your protagonist's journey is always the question.
Exactly.
And then also, if somebody's like reading, let's say one of your readers reads it, or a greater number of readers, and they have that disability, will they still be able to resonate with it and understand and agree with the way that you're portraying it?
Right. Exactly.
So I think this is wonderful to talk about. I want to hop into, all right, so we're going to hop into our LGBT conversation. I know, I'm super excited. If you have any questions, if you're here in the stream or you're watching on the replay, drop a question. If you have anything you want to know about creating a character with disabilities, or what the process is, maybe for your own storytelling, drop the questions down in the comments and we'll circle back to them at our Q&A segment. But before we get to this, something I 100% totally forgot to advertise at the beginning of the stream. Holly is going to do a live reading at the beginning of her book that's coming out, of A Diamond, Bright and Broken. I am so excited. Usually I'm the one doing the reading, so I just have to like hope that like I sound good. I'm super excited. I'm stoked that you're going to do the excerpt reading of the first it's the first chapter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do, Holly, I'm going to pull it up onto this the screen. Let me make sure I got this here. I will perfect. Nope, that's not very fun. Okay, hold on. Let me drop this. And perfect. Here we go. So I'm gonna drop myself, and then so Holly, what I've done is I pulled up the first chapter. This is the first chapter of your book that's coming out this year, A Diamond, Bright and Broken. So excited to hear this. What I'll do is you can just read, go as long as you want. I would say, yeah, and then just let me know. We'll probably maybe do this about like a 5 to 10 minute reading. And then you can just let me know when you hit a good stopping point, and I'll pull myself back up onto the screen.
Okay, cool. I'm so off of like, how long does it take to read this? I don't know.
Trust me, when I do my readings, I do live story readings for the community every Saturday.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. I have to give everyone like a 10-minute timeline. Otherwise, I would read one story for like 30 minutes, another one for like 5 minutes. Awesome. So I'll pull you up and you can start whenever you're.
Awesome. I'll try not to be monotone. So, chapter 1. If my tears hadn't paid for this mansion, maybe I wouldn't feel so bitter about living in it, but they did, and so I hate it. My parents decorated the hallway with everything they wanted in a home. It's all a bit excessive. When there are hungry and homeless people in Serency or those who can't pay for medical care, having anything extravagant feels selfish, wasteful. We, really any of the upper class here in Norvale, could be making a difference and helping those in need instead of hoarding it all. But I get no say because my diamond tears belong to mother and father. A lush carpet lines the floor. Custom pottery sit on pillars as tall as myself. Silk curtains adorn tall windows so pristinely clean, I swear I could reach right through them. Wrought iron sconces burning cinder rose scented candles light my way. As I walk down the hall of the grand foyer to my parents' room, a sense of dread settles like a stone in my stomach. Unlike most people, I don't shed regular tears. Instead, the hard, tiny gems fall from my eyes, diamond tears, my blessing and my curse. The colorful drapes hanging from the ceiling are the most recent addition to this absurd collection of unnecessary belongings. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind luxury, but not at anyone else's expense. It jolts me back to the time I was 5 years old and mother wanted a new jewelry set. Cry for me, Cadence. Do it for mommy. My diamond tears have always caused me sharp, intense eye pain and occasionally cut my cheeks as they spill over. Until that day, I hadn't reached a breaking point. But that time, when I begged mother to stop, she refused and said I mustn't love her enough to give her what she wanted. And so I cried until my eyes turned bloodshot and I couldn't open them for days. My gut wrenches at the memory, yet I continue my trek and pass every painting on the wall, knowing full well where they came from, who bought them. I was 10 when father wanted to replace the collection he'd only gotten the year prior. We have to impress our guests. Don't worry, it will all be over soon. Except I'm 16 now, and it's not over. It will never be over. Not as long as I need to help my sister Al. I approach the laughter that echoes from the door of my parents' room, open just a crack. A pattern of silver swirls coats the door frame, and that pit in my stomach is now an anvil. All our doors were plain before mother complained that Lady Amatsu was showing us up with the most gorgeously decorated doors in her house. I scratch my back where a similar pattern of scars hides. It makes me want to rip all the silken folds off my dress and leave my wrists and fingers bare of their bangles and rings for how much pain they've cost me. I inhale deeply and push past the door. Cadence, thank the gods you're finally here. We have to pay Dr. Hugh in a few hours, mother says. She's sitting by her vanity, dabbing blush on her cheeks and admiring herself in the mirror. Her long brown hair matches my own, except hers is smoother. Mine is mixed hair, a combination of straight, wavy, and frizzy locks. I like to thank father for giving me the variety. I tuck a strand behind my ear and close the door as if sealing my fate. Their room looks smaller than I remember. There is so much glittering gold in the decor, from small statues and trinkets sitting on all available flat surfaces to multicolored tapestries of castles and landscapes. Globe lights hang from the ceiling, equally spread out among a two-tiered chandelier. I have to squint at first to adjust to the brightness. When I do, my gaze sweeps to the room and I stifle a scoff. Since when did they have busts of themselves made? Father stands by his statue with his arms folded, and I remember when Al and I were younger, we used to hang and swing on his arm, giggling and smiling. Now we're on our own, struggling to hold on to something that's not even there, and maybe never was. I've never believed my parents were on my side. After all their greed, how can I trust them? But I still hope they'll change someday, for their daughter's sake. But I'm not sure we'll ever be the family I want us to be. Do you need any help, Cadence? Father asks as he walks over to Mother, their dark brown and white skin in stark contrast to each other. My sister's and my shared skin tone is somewhere in the middle, white like our mom's with an olive undertone. I returned to Father's question. Do I need any help? Help? If you need to help me cry, all you have to do is tell me about all the promises you two have broken. But nothing can break my sealed lips because right now, my parents aren't worth my breath. I shake my head. It's not the first time I've cried on command, but the billionth time isn't any easier. I usually picture something sad, like a future where I'm never allowed to leave the house for the rest of my life, and the tears flow. Other times, I'm so detached from my body, like some incorporeal spirit, that nothing comes out. That's when mother and father beat me, only mentally, but still awful. Whatever it takes to make me start bawling. The worry in my stomach crushes my insides. I should know better than to put up with it, but I'll do anything to help Al, whatever it takes. This time, I envision if my sister was gone, if her neuromuscular disease progressed so rapidly that she died, leaving me alone. Oh gods, what would I do? Al is worth more than the world to me. Even though she's 2 years older than me, I still try to protect her from mother and father, but she's usually the one holding me together. I can't help believing that if she died, I'll have failed her. All the weight rests on my shoulders, and I know whom our parents would blame for her passing. The morbid thoughts are working. A coolness settles in the corners of my eyes, and soon diamonds are landing in my cupped hands with tiny clinks. My tear ducts scream for relief as each finely cut gem slices past my sclera like a butcher knife. I've gotten used to some of the pain over time, but I'll never be completely numb. I finish lamenting over my sister's imagined death, ending the torturous flow of riches. My eyes burn and my cheeks ache as if I'd been crying normal tears, the way Al looks when she cries. The diamonds in my palms reflect the light of the other jewels and trinkets overtaking the room, mocking me. I release them into Mother's hands, her delicate fingers with long painted nails closing over them like claws. Her eyes glint even brighter than the diamonds do. Father flashes his pearly whites and pockets some of my tears for himself. Thank the gods again for your gift, he says, a familiar refrain so cold and lifeless it only makes me shiver. Gift? This so called gift has brought me more than physical pain, has forced me to cry in private, live in complete privacy. No one can know about it because then they'd want to use me, take advantage of me. At least that's what mother and father say. Isn't it funny how they're doing the very thing they're protecting me from? But I don't voice any of my thoughts. I just nod and exit the room, wondering if they even realize I haven't spoken a word.
Awesome. I was like, make sure I can throw this up, and let's go.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice reading, my friend. That was really awesome. So that was really cool. Wow. I was like, I don't think I've ever read an ability or a power. So I mean, essentially it's an ability is where it's like her tears basically become crystals.
Yeah.
Diamond, bright and broken. All right, this making a little more sense now.
Yes, the original title was Diamond Tears, if that does anything. Thank you.
What an interesting concept with her powers basically being used and abused by her family.
Yes.
And she's being kept in because she basically makes the money.
Yes,
Wow,
exactly. Yep.
I'm sure like so many people like out there who've been like used by their family before, or people like maybe like a lot of like creators, influencers, or writers, like they can probably relate with that actually. That's really crazy. That's cool. How before we hop into LGBT, I'm just curious, how did you come up with the concept for this book?
Yeah, this was a really like random concept. That's why ideas can come from anywhere because I woke up in the morning, I was scrolling through YouTube and there was a thumbnail of because I'm subscribed to some like instrumental music channels so that I can add to my like writing playlist when I'm writing. And it was this picture of this girl and I think she was like crying like feathers or something. And I was just like, what if those were diamonds? Like, and it was just like this weird thing that came up that like popped in my head. And I've always loved Tangled, and this is thank you, Pat. This is like a Tangled retelling, so it made sense that like this is what her family, they're keeping her in her tower, not for her hair, but for her diamond tears. So it was all like, well, why is she crying diamond tears? You know, who is she doing this for? What would make her want to? So yeah.
That is so cool. I was like, when it comes to abilities, and I think about like, okay, how do I do an ability that hasn't been done before, but something that could resonate? Because we really think about like magic is really just a way of talking about a theme or an idea or a concept that we want our readers to take away with by the end of the story. So I thought that was really clever. And by the way, you did a really good reading of it too.
Thanks.
Did you do the is there an audiobook coming out for it?
I hope so. That was one of the questions because there's some of the books in the Inimitable book titles that have audiobooks. Not all of them do yet. So I'm hoping that there will be one for Diamond. So, but at least there will be paperback, ebook, and hardcover. But I might be like, hey, maybe I'll do the audiobook.
I know. I've been thinking about that myself as I'm like working on my last Scarecrow novel. I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to create an audiobook at some point. Now the question is, how much of the audiobook do I read through? And then how much do I get like a cast? And I'm like, I could go so many things with it. But well, with that being said, let me drop in the chat real fast. So if you were a fan of that, the first intro that we got of that, let me pull up where you can go get that a pre-ordered copy of A Diamond Bride and Broken. And Holly, remind me again, when does the book launch?
It is November 5th, 2024.
Excellent. So just in time for the holidays, November 5th, we'll just be starting with NaNoWriMo. So what a great way to start off the holiday season. Probably a great gift for family. And yeah, absolutely. So let me just drop this here. So there's the pre-order link. It'll also be in the YouTube video description as well.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and here's my physical copy. I forgot.
If you want to get a physical, so you can get a digital or a physical copy are the two available options.
Yes, and if you pre-order and submit your receipt on my the publisher's website, which is that same link, if you scroll down, you get these character art cards of Cadence. Here's Allegra in the wheelchair, and then here's Raven. So
can I see wait, which one's the wheelchair character?
Oh yeah, here.
I was like, I forget names so badly. So Cadence or Allegra.
This is Allegra. Yeah, her nickname is Al, so that's what you saw in the first chapter.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, from Al's point. She calls her Al. And then also in the hardcover, you get a bonus scene, exclusive chapter, which is actually from someone's point of view.
Ooh, that is the way to do it. I love your thinking. I may not be doing the same thing for Last Scarecrow.
Yes. Thank you.
So I wanted to make sure to plug that. You know what's interesting is also what comes out over the holidays, which also features a supporting wheelchair character, is the Wicked movies.
Yes.
Like there's the main sister is a wheelchair character. I'm like,
yes,
Nessa. Yeah, I think it's
Nessa.
It's been so long since I watched the musical, but
I almost said Nesta, but that's from Akatar.
Nesta. Awesome. So let's hop into LGBT, my favorite. So I'm starting it off. So we want to talk about how do you create believable LGBT characters in your writing? Now, we had a really great question from John over here. John, you were saying, so my question, are you gay, Jared? I mean, thanks for not advertising it, as it is at least part of my identity too. What about you, Holly? So John, and for myself, I'm bisexual. It took me a while with really like understanding that about my sexuality. I spent the good first 10 years of like being straight and then being gay. And then I ping pong back and forth for 10 years before really realizing and allowing myself to be all right with being truly bisexual and identifying with that. Mm-hmm. So that's for me. Holly?
Yes. And that is me as well. I am also bisexual.
Woo, cheers. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's not something that I like necessarily like advertise. I've got my like rainbow flag on my profiles. I mentioned that A Diamond Bright and Broken is own voices because Cadence is bisexual. I have written other like side characters in some of my other novels that were part of the LGBTQ plus community, but never the main character. And so that was something that was very different because I was like kind of writing more of myself in this book with the physical therapist, the bisexuality than like I ever have. But yeah, for me too, it was something that like I didn't really understand. And like I am married and in a, heteronormative looking relationship. But so I like that can, we can look like anyone, we can be anyone. So
I think that's incredible. And I think it's interesting, right? So as we're writing characters and we're creating characters, now I'm going to be honest, I'm not too familiar with what the current state is of the LGBT readership market and books. I'm just not as familiar. Do you have a little knowledge on what like the current state is of LGBT?
Yeah, I feel like it was around when I started writing this first draft, like in 2020, that like own voices like really came about. Because a lot of people wanted books that were written by that was like they were authentic, so that if you were writing a story about like a Mexican immigrant, that like you were that, or your parents were like Mexican immigrants or something like that,
People are
because
like writing from experience.
yeah, writing from experience. And it doesn't mean that if like I could have written Cadence as bisexual and not have been that, but it was just having the stories be told by someone so that your story wasn't taking that away from someone who actually was writing that.
That totally makes sense. So that people
Yeah,
are able to share their own authentic experience, especially
right.
at least in the LGBT community. I could see that.
Yeah. And I know like, from my querying before I got the book deal, like a lot of literary agents and publishers were like looking for you know LGBT representation,
Really?
disability
So that
reps.
was that like a big question that was asked to you
That
consistently? And when they
and
say LGBT representation, was bisexuality, is that still included? Or were they
yeah.
more like, I want a gay or I want a lesbian or transgendered?
Yeah, no, and I think it's still growing. I think there's still
Mhm,
room for it because I know there's a lot of parts that aren't represented in books more, like asexuality,
mhm,
transgender. Just there's a lot of that there are a lot of books that have come out in recent years with main characters that are um, consider themselves in the community, but there still aren't enough, and of course, like
completely agreed.
there's the whole banned books movement,
Mhm,
and
yep, and
and
that
then
I'm familiar with.
just
Mhm.
with having LGBT representation, it's called not clean, not kid friendly, even though
Right, it's
we're
like there's a
representing
difference
the
between an LGBT
children.
story that's,
Yes.
erotica as compared to LGBT story that
Right.
follows a character either learning about their identity or maybe it's a part of them throughout the story.
Yes.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. So I think that can be hard because, in promoting my book, it's like I know that I have friends and family who don't agree, necessarily agree with the community, don't support the community, but
Mhm,
I have to be true to myself, and so I'm
mhm,
writing the books that I know I would like to read, and that
mhm.
means I'm writing books that other people wanna read too.
No, that's a really good point. Even as like I think through my own writing, and even as I'm like thinking about Last Scarecrow, um, I I feel like I want to create characters that represent both identities. Because I think
Mhm.
in a realist, and when I say both um non-LGBT and LGBT,
Mhm.
because I feel like that's what would be realistic, at least just in my point of view, in any
Yep.
type of world, right? You're gonna have characters that are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and then characters that aren't. Now, of course, there's so many different terms and so many different classifications.
Right.
But I know that for myself, I at least want to be able to write for sexualities that I know, both from my personal experience and from the research and networking with people over time. So I think I have two different types of relationships or character dynamics in my story. But like my story is like an epic fantasy post-apocalyptic, and it's like it's there, but it's such an underlying theme that even like relationships, I don't really have a love romance in the story. And I thought about it, especially including it, but I'm like, it's not predominant to this specific story,
Right.
but possibly later in the series itself. But for you, my question is, how do you craft LGBT characters that won't offend your readership?
Yeah, and so that
I think this is the question, right? We want to write. We don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, it's kind of along the same lines with the disability readers, like especially if you're not part of the LGBTQ plus community and you're writing someone, especially if they're the main character. I think getting someone to at least like read those sections that character is in, to make sure that they're being represented appropriately. And I think, because I draw off of some real life experiences, for the story, it's like I can't offend anyone because this is me, you know what I mean? If they're like, well, that's not how they would react, or that's not what they would have done, and it's like, but
like that's how I would have reacted.
Right. So it's like there is kind of that fine line. And and look, Vanessa is here. That's great.
Wow, Vanessa,
I shouted you out.
Stream, by the way. Holly was totally like representing you and sending people your way earlier in the stream. So really good. It's glad to have you here.
Yes. For the disability reader services. And I think you also do bisexual, ADHD, mental health, atheist, Black female. Yeah. So you do a lot of diversity reading. But I think too, it's also making them believable where, okay, well, it's not like the gay person is the one who's hitting on everyone or flirting with, the bisexual person is checking out guys and girls all the time. It's like, that's not how our brain works. Like, so I think it's being realistic and believable as just as if they were straight or not, non-LGBT. And I think there is that fine line too, because it's a spectrum. Some people can be like very little, like, oh, maybe I like men a little bit, and I like women a lot, and others are like, oh, I'm about 50-50, and others, I'm about 75-25%. So there is that spectrum, and so it's like part of it is like you can't go wrong because there is such fluidity within the community.
Yeah, and I think about as I develop like my own characters with their sexuality, and I think about myself, right? I'm bisexual, but my sexuality is one piece of my identity.
Yes.
Right. So that's going to be one thing that I think about in terms to like my relationships and all the other things about my life. Yes. And I would like to throw this back to you, the audience here, right? If you're creating characters with LGBT themes, think about your own lived experience. And then how do you transfer that? How do you translate that into a character? Now, if the character is like just learning about their identity and they're just coming out as LGBT or one of the other identities out there, like that's going to be such a different experience than somebody who's known about it and has understand it and embraced it throughout the last 10, 20, 30 years of their life. And I think it just depends on what type of story you're trying to tell.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of that same line of what we were saying about characters with disabilities, is like making sure they're their own person. They have their own personality. That's not what is defining them, making them realistic and relatable. Everyone should know at least one person who is, in the LGBT community and think about how they're acting. It's like, you're not hanging out with them and every second thinking like, oh my gosh, this person likes women, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
like,
right?
yeah, well, this
Exactly, completely
transgender
agree.
person can also fight, have their sword and fight in the war, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
But and I think what's interesting is how do I write other characters
mhm,
around, and this similar with the disability conversation of like how do I write other characters and write a society and a world that's may or may not perceive them differently, right?
right.
They might perceive them the same, they might perceive them differently, and that's like the same state of the world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
If you identify yourself as somebody who's LGBT in one part of the world, everybody loves it. In another part of the world, people might behave differently. And I
Yeah.
think that you figure out how do I take that and translate that into my storytelling.
Exactly.
I think the question I ask myself would for you too, Holly, is like how do I, and I don't know if maybe it's just hire a sensitivity reader of like how do I write this character so it doesn't offend people. And I
Mhm.
think maybe it's having being as authentic to our characters as possible.
Right. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that Yeah. I mean, I guess though there will always be people out there who will probably offend, like some portion of people aren't going to like what you're writing and some portion of people aren't going to like you. But
mhm.
if you have like 90% of your people are offended, that's probably
There's
that's
something
probably
going
good,
on. Yeah.
like good evidence.
Yeah, I think having that sensitivity reader is important, um, to make sure to not catch those glaring things,
Hmm.
um, because you don't want them to fall into, like, a trope or,
Hmm.
because I thought about this one character I had who was, in another book I wrote, she was like a cop, but she like smoked and then she was running after the characters and she was like huffing and puffing because she was like
Hmm.
out of shape. And then like and then I had one of my beta readers like they were like really offended because it was like, oh, of course, like this bigger cop, like you made it so that she was the smoker and was
Hmm.
dumb and then couldn't run. And I was like, oh shoot, that's not what I meant. I was just trying to give some variety to like my characters, but like seeing it from her perspective, oh, she took that the wrong way. Yeah,
Hmm.
now I see what she was talking about. Let me change this. So
It's really interesting. Maybe like maybe when I'm working on a story, or whether this is in my Last Scarecrow universe or another story, maybe I would create a situation where they are perceived the wrong way
mhm,
through somebody else, and then a situation where they are, if I was writing a story that was more identity focused
right.
about sexuality.
Yeah.
That's probably the way that I would tackle it.
Mhm, and you
Um,
can ask those
mhm,
specific questions to, like, your beta readers or critique partners too, like, do you f how is this, portrayed? Does this seem offensive, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a really great point that you bring up, Holly. If there's things that you're not sure about and things you're like, hey, I don't know if this is comes across a certain way. After you've gone through your rough draft or your second or your third draft, whenever you start
Mhm,
giving it out to readers or an editor, whatever route you go, I think it can help to have a list of questions, being like, hey, I need to know these things. Like, do these come to mind as you're reading through it? And I think that's really
yeah,
important. Um, Myself as an editor, because I do developmental copy and line editing, I try to go into a reading experience without any knowledge, because I just try to
mm,
take like I try to come at it from the mind of a reader,
yeah,
and because I'm coming at it from a storytelling perspective. But I think it can help if there's certain questions that are at the top of my mind of like, hey, is this character come across like an asshole, or do they come across as like your best friend? I was like, okay, it's like that's a good thing to be aware of. And then I'm thinking of that in the back of my mind as I'm going through the editing, and then my recommendation and feedback will be adjusted knowing that.
mm,
So I think that's really cool that you brought that up. And I think it's
yeah,
just being aware of what your goal and intentions.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
And I think Vanessa brought up a good point here. Vanessa was like, you're always going to offend someone. It's unavoidable. And I'm glad that you agree with me, but let's not offend 90% of them. Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate I appreciate that. Awesome. So like, I know that we could like talk about LGBT forever. Like I could come up with LGBT related questions. I think it really comes down to like how, for me, it comes back down to the character itself and how are we doing the character development. LGBT, their identity, disabilities, their beliefs, strengths, weaknesses, loves, hates. That's all part of an overarching character. And that's my belief, which is why it's like, regardless of what genre you're in, it's all at heart, it's all character journeys.
Yeah. And all that encompassing is what makes them relatable.
Yay! Woo! Well, so with that being said, now I want to hop into a Q&A. So I've penned up a couple questions here. Let me throw up the banner. I was like, I had it somewhere here. So Q&A. So what questions do you have for Holly or myself about writing believable characters, either with disabilities or LGBT themes? Drop them in the comments. I've been saving up a couple of yours, so I do have a couple queued up. Now, while we're waiting for some questions to drop, Holly, I have another question here for you. I think this will really help out our community. If you could give one piece of advice for writers who want to advance their craft, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh,
like what's the one like writing tip on the spot? Go.
I think what really helped me was being intentional about improving my craft, either through like YouTube, like AuthorTube community, and or like writing craft books like this, because that's kind of what I did when I first started writing. I was just like, what do? I don't know anything. And so I just delved in and researched what I needed to do, because before I just kind of like just wrote the story and I didn't know anything about story structure, white room syndrome, all of that. So I really feel like I got that foundational experience from writing craft books and finding the AuthorTube community. Yeah.
That's really great advice. That's really great insight. I would completely agree with the community aspect, right? Like, all it takes is joining one community. You don't know what type of advice you're going to get. You don't know the types of writers that you'll meet. I've been involved in so many writers groups throughout the years. And I think every single writers group has its own feel. The same thing with like online. I'm always of the belief that if you can find a writers group in your area, you should, because I think it creates more of a commitment on our part. We're like, oh, I have to go. And then it helps us with our consistency. But I think if you're really busy, our online community is like your community, my community, AuthorTube, like the BookTube is a thing for a reason, because we want to be inspired and we want to connect with other writers.
Right, exactly.
All right, excellent. So let me hop into, so we had a couple questions here. Let me pull them up. So the first question we had, let's see, a little early, it looked like from Bethany. So Bethany was speaking about that she has a character with asthma, which affects how her abilities, like her asthma affects her abilities. And she was posing it kind of as like a question statement. So I wanted to ask you, Holly, if you were to write like a character with asthma, you've never experienced asthma, what would your process be? And like, how would you make it believable? So that way, especially if the character has other magic, like, how would you go about that process?
Yeah. So I would look up like, on a like reputable website, like the symptoms of asthma, the treatment for asthma, how, like, what caused them to get the asthma, how often does it come up, so that, oh, it's not when this character is like, during her everyday life, but maybe it's when she's training for battle, she gets short of breath, or maybe it's because she starts getting anxious and, and then you think about, well, what are the treatments? Are there inhalers in this fantasy world? Maybe it's going to be a play on the inhaler and you call it something different, like their air tube, or something like that.
Yeah. Kind of how
it,
what you've done with your like physical therapist, like
yes,
it's its own class in this fantasy world.
yeah. And that's where I found you have to reword some things to make it feel realistic in the fantasy world. Obviously, if you're writing, in the real world, you can use inhaler and all of that. But I would go about that. So then when you're going through, after you finish the first draft and you're going through the second draft, your developmental edits, that is where I would look and see, hey, she was running here. She probably would have been short of breath here. Or, you know what, this shouldn't have set off like an asthma attack or something like that. So, or maybe like, oh, it's her love interest that needs to grab the treatment for her because she left it back home, or, you know, something like that. So how is it tying into like other characters? Does she meet someone else who also has asthma? And they like have something to relate to each other, makes a love triangle, you know, like who knows? So you can like go from
that's
it
really
and just keep
powerful. Yep.
building on it using just that one thing.
I think that's powerful to think about what are all the different types of situations that someone with this disability could potentially deal with.
Yes.
And then how does that affect the other characters? How does it affect their overarching journey, like their main hero's journey? Or is it not that important to the main journey, but it's just part of their identity? Right. I think those are really great things to think through, Holly. That was a great response.
Thanks.
All right, so let's go number 2. So it looks like Eli had a great question here. Let's see. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the stream. If this has been addressed, my bad. Is it more important to get anecdotally authentic situations for characters or give them agency in their story? Authentic situations.
I think it's a little bit of both, because there needs to be drama sometimes, but you don't want to like over exaggerate where it's like, you know, where you're shaking your head and shaking the book at the character doing the stupid thing that they learned in the first act, you know, and now they're doing it again, and you're like, they should have learned, this is so dumb, or like, why are they going in the dark scary basement when, you know, XYZ. So you don't want your like characters to be like, oh my gosh, or you don't want the readers to be like rolling their eyes at the character's reaction or response to something. So I think you can be authentic by making it believable, but you're giving them that agency where it's not something that your readers are going to expect every time, because you have to suspend disbelief sometimes to catch them off guard. You know, you give them some of the things that they are going to expect, and then some things that they're not going to expect in the plot. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I think it's balancing, right? It's balancing like what, for a character that has a disability, what is an authentic, and I think I would think through the different scenarios of it personally. For somebody who has this disability, what is an authentic experience for them that is like a positive experience? What's an authentic experience that's a horrible experience? And then I would go through that list. That'd be one authentic list. And then I'd create a second one where I'd be like, okay, now what are ways that I could make this maybe obstacles, or ways that I could make this really challenge the character in the story itself. And then I look at my authentic version and I'm like the story driven version and see where the overlap is.
I love that.
I think that's how I would tackle it, in all honesty. Like,
and I think really, I totally agree with that. And I think like taking on, like thinking about their personality too, because some of the things that Al or Allegra does in the book is because of her personality, but someone else with a different personality would have reacted differently, even though they were in that same situation. And what if they had the same disability? So you really have to think about their personality too, because no two people are going to respond the same way.
Yeah, and it looks like Eli added, not that you should have to choose, but say you just have a perfectly consistent bisexual protagonist. I approve here. We both approve bisexual protagonist who is super authentic, but then has no agency in the plot. It's like, is that really the point? And I mean, like, the protagonist is bisexual. So I think that's interesting. I mean, I'm of the belief that every character in our stories has agency.
Yeah.
I believe every character has their own decisions, but the question is, how am I making their decisions from the reader's perspective? How do I make the decision feel believable while I'm still also progressing the plot? And I think sometimes that's a challenge as writers, right? Like, I want my readers to feel like, oh, that could really happen, but like I also don't want them to guess, like I don't want them to guess the ending. I don't want them to guess the climax, like, but I want them to believe that this could happen in this world that I've created.
Yeah, I think that consistency throughout, like what they're like Vanessa was saying, the goals, the fears, goals, motivations, like that is the driving force to make that consistency across everything that they do. And because the protagonist, they have to have agency, because they can't be passive in their own story, otherwise they're not the main character, so they shouldn't be the main character.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's like, who is my main character, right? Your main character should obviously have the most Eli, as you put, agency, right, and the most decision making, but then your supporting characters are like, all right, how am I going to show that while making it feel believable? I think is the way I'd look at it.
Right.
Awesome. And then John asked a great question here. Actually, John dropped a really great quote here. Just because you are a disabled character doesn't mean you have character. Quentin Tarantino. Yes, John, that was a great quote.
That's great.
John, that deserves. Oh, I got to. No, that's a writing. That's the wrong one. Give me the applause. I tried to give an applause, and the thing didn't work. Oh no! There we go. I was like, StreamYard messing with me.
I love that.
John, that definitely deserved an applause. That was a great quote. Yesterday, I started a brand new segment on my live streams where I did a quote of the day game, and basically, like, I highlighted like the top 10 comments, quotes at the end, and then nominated a winner.
Nice.
John, if I was doing that today, that would be the winner.
I love that.
Okay. So we have another great question from John here. So John, you were saying maybe an off-topic question, mirroring my LGBT one. Do I or you, Holly, have any disabilities? For myself, I think for myself, I wouldn't say that I have any specific disabilities, but I've definitely dealt with my share of mental health struggles between depression and anxiety. So I understand both of those realms very, very well. And I'm a huge proponent of mental health awareness.
Yes. Apparently I'm echoing your echoing your answers with this. We're more alike than we thought.
I was like, okay, Holly, I'm going to let you answer the question first next time.
No, you're fine. No, I have anxiety. I don't have like a physical disability. I have anxiety. When I first was diagnosed, probably in 2016 or something, I was diagnosed with mixed anxiety and depressive disorder. But since then, like, I've kind of said I've just had anxiety, and I get in like depressive ruts, which I say are like just the normal, like, writerly normal life ruts that everyone gets. But then I'm like, does everyone get that, Holly? Are you just saying that? But yeah, so it's more mental for me too.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's like, I think it's a part of our experience, and then like, how can we speak to it if we want to share, if we want to involve a character journey included in that type of experience, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Remy here had a really great question. And Remy was leading up with, let's see. So Remy, I'm someone who became disabled in my 20s. My character becomes disabled during the course of the story. A lot of my own experiences are going into her development. My question is, do you have any advice on how to balance the newness of the disability without making it her entire character?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for sharing that. Oh, sorry, my husband's coming home.
I was like, I thought your cat wanted to be involved in the
yeah, my dog just opened the door. So, even though that is probably a big part of the book, your character still needs like that GMC, we call it, like goal, motivation, conflict, or in Save the Cat, I think it's like a PWN, a problem, a want, and a need.
Yep, that makes sense.
But so like, and then also, I think it's also in Save the Cat, but maybe it's not just in Save the Cat writes a novel, is the what do they call, I forget, but like the internal and the external arc.
Mm-hmm.
So something's happening to your character both like externally and internally. It
Mm-hmm.
can be the same thing, but it can also be something different. So it could be that like your character is going through this disability and getting symptoms that are worsening and worsening, but are they also in school and trying to graduate? Or if it's fantasy, did they just enter training to be a mage and now all of a sudden they're not able to, fight like their
Mm-hmm.
parents put them in school for, and they were
Mm-hmm.
riding on it, so like there's other things around the plot that is going to deepen it and make it so that it's not just all about the disability, it's all these other things that are happening around it too.
Yeah, and I think I would. Holly, that was really great, by the way. I
Thank
think
you.
I would add on to that a little what we were bringing up earlier. The question I would pose to you, Remy, and it looks like Eli, you were that was kind of mirroring what you were asking as well.
Mm.
Think about the last time that you yourself went through an experience, whether it was a traumatic experience or whether it was something about your identity or something about or a disability. How did you feel? How did that change your point of view and your day-to-day life when it originally happened? Like in like the hours, the days, the weeks. You still had a life. Like clearly you probably still had to go to school, or you still had family, or you still had a job, you still had responsibilities. But how did that affect your outlook and affect all the other things? Like obviously the other things are still there, but now it's put through a lens of like, wow, this is like, it's new, it's traumatic, it's new, it's good, depending on what it is. So I try to think of what is the perception and how I've gone through that type of experience. And then once I understand that mindset, now how do I translate that to the journey that the character is going? Because if it's new, they would go through the same thing, right? You would, if I was writing it, I would include points of paragraphs of interiority, of them questioning things, new characters who are asking, like new characters or plot. It would be through the lens of this new experience, this new thing that has happened to them. But obviously, over time, they're going to absorb it and then move on to other things, right? And then, like, I think it's also important to understand, like, is this a disability or this experience or a trauma? Is it a plot point as well that you've decided, or is it just a character development thing? And then understanding that, right? Because I think there's times where it can just be character development. There's times where it can also be a plot point, but I think being intentional with it is the key to success.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome. So those were some really great questions. As we're approaching the hour and the half mark. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to be hopping into a live writing game exercise, which is super cool. But before we do that, before I wrap up the interview, the podcast portion of this, I have to ask you one question.
Okay.
If tomorrow you got hit by a bus and
Oh
you
my
could
God.
leave, and it was your last day on earth, and you could leave behind one final quote for writers, what would the quote be?
Oh my goodness. That is like intense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say for writers or just for myself. I think be kind to yourself and be kind and believe in yourself. Yeah.
I love that. Be kind and believe in yourself. I think we always be kind and believe in yourself. I'm writing it down here.
I was like, oh my gosh. Oh.
We
Oh.
sometimes it's easy to forget how the shortness of life. And I think it's so powerful to always think of like, what's this one philosophy that we want to leave behind? And I think be kind and believe in yourself. It's very straightforward and to the point. And I absolutely love it, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's the one question I get to ask all my podcast guests at the end.
Oh. I love that. I need to see all the other ones that they left. I gotta do the replays of all the other ones now.
Which is why I always ask my guests, I'm like, so did you check out the previous podcast? Because it tells me how creative my questions end up being.
Love it.
Awesome. So as we're moving on to the next section, real quick, if you've been enjoying this podcast or you've been enjoying like any part of this and you want to keep following along, let's see, where did I throw this? Make sure to follow and subscribe. Tap that follow button. Well, if you're on one of our other 5 platforms, if you're here on YouTube, subscribe both to myself, if you're here on the Kauffman's Corner YouTube channel, and to Holly, if you're over on at the WriteHollyDavis channel, make sure you subscribe. For my community, I'm a crazy writer. I go hard. I live stream every single day, 160 plus days and counting. Monday through Friday is my casual writers community where we do writing sprints and we just try to beat procrastination. Friday, we do live storytelling from best-selling novels, where I'm currently reading through Fourth Wing, where that's actually has a character with a disability.
Yeah.
And then Saturday is our story and critique show, where I do live readings from the community. So if you want your story read, and then Sunday is our Creative Right Now podcast. So if you're subscribed, you'll be alerted when I go live. And Holly, why would people want to subscribe to your channel?
Yeah, so I mostly do live streams now, and every Monday I have my Monday motivation writing sprints from like 6 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's like a great way to like start the week off strong, even if you were like, oh, the weekend's gone, I didn't write. Well, we are always here on Mondays. And then it's usually every the first Saturday or Sunday of the month is when we have our Diversity is Lit book club discussion of the book that we read the previous month.
Ooh, that's exciting. Okay.
So that's fun. Yes. So that's up on my channel. And we, during the breaks of the live streams, we're talking about writing craft. We talk about real life. We are friends and we welcome everyone.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I realized on Mondays, because I moved my Monday stream time to a little earlier. I've now actually been able to, I think my writing sprint or my live stream ends on Mondays right when yours starts. I'm like,
Oh,
well, I can
that's
actually
awesome.
do both.
Oh, nice. I got to catch yours and then hop into mine. That's
But
fun.
before, like, they were at the same time, and I'm like, especially if like one of my favorite influencers, if they go live at the same time, I'm like, well, guess I'm not watching you today.
Oh, right. Oh.
But that is awesome. Holly, thank you for sharing that. For those of you who are here in the live stream or you're watching on the replay, if you want to know more about Holly and what she's doing, if you're here on the YouTube channel, on either of our YouTube channels, I posted all the links to Holly's website, the link to pre-order the book, her Instagram, and all the links down in the YouTube video description below. Let me copy it and I'll throw it down in the chat as well. If you want to go check out Holly's website and you want to know more about what she's doing, or maybe you just want to pre-order the book, because that is a very cool book. I am definitely going to pre-order a copy.
Thank
so
you.
Definitely looking forward to it. And once again, when does it come out, Holly?
November 5th.
Okay, so November 5th. So it's like what month is it right now? June. So okay, we still got
June. A couple months.
months to go. So awesome. So that is really cool. With that out of the way, let's hop into our live writing game. So Holly, something that I started trying out with my podcast and with my community, I want to say this, I started maybe a month ago, was I would do this live writing game. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a prompt into ChatGPT to give us an image. We're going to use the image as inspiration for a 20-minute free write. Cool. Super easy. Let's see what we can come up with. All right, let me reorient my screen here and pull up ChatGPT.
Cool.
And Holly, I know you're so used to doing like live writing sprints as well. So you're probably like, a little familiar with this format. Obviously in my community, like we're clearly doing writing sprints every day, or I'm doing writing sprints and they're maybe doing writing
Hanging
sprints.
out. Yeah.
I always tell writers, I'm like, I believe that the writing process is the whole process. So if you want to be involved in a writing sprint, that could be maybe you're brainstorming an idea. So you're in the development brainstorm phase, maybe you're writing, or maybe you're in the editing. It's all part of the writing process.
Yes.
A book takes all of the things, right? Regardless of what stage you're at.
Love that.
Okay, so I got ChatGPT pulled up here. Let me see, make sure I have the right screen up. Perfect. So, all right. So Holly, work with me for a second. What prompt should we put into ChatGPT? I think I usually ask for an image, so I tell it, and I always try to be kind. For if the AI overlords like take over the world, they're like, hopefully they'll remember that I was kind.
Gosh, well, I guess something along the lines of like what we're talking about. So maybe like someone with a disability.
Yep, I think that would be good. So what I'm doing is we're doing a live writing exercise. I'll blow it up so you guys can see as well. So we're doing a live writing exercise. Please generate an image that we can use as inspiration. Now, the specifics of the image, I usually try to say, please include a protagonist. And let's have our protagonist, please include a protagonist with a clear disability. So hopefully we'll see what ChatGPT does here. I'm a little nervous about this. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go into the actual image one. Okay. So please, yeah, I'm nervous about this. I don't know what ChatGPT. Sometimes the images it gives us are incredible. Sometimes it's we're on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
Please include a protagonist with a clear disability. I'm trying to think of if there should be anything else with the protagonist. No, because that could technically be the obstacle. So please include a protagonist with a clear disability. Include an antagonist. Include an antagonist. Also include an obstacle.
I love that.
You think that's good? I think that's so we have protagonist with a disability, antagonist, and an obstacle. Yeah, I think that's good because I think if any of our you're going to join us, if you want to write any like LGBT themed style, I think you can just infuse that into your character. I feel like if I do LGBT here, it's going to give us like 20 colors that may or may not work. All right, so this is going to be a trial. Please click with a clear an antagonist and an obstacle. Perfect. Let's see what we get. So sometimes, Holly, this is like drum roll. Sometimes we get something really great.
Fingers crossed.
Sometimes like the first image works, and sometimes it takes a couple tries.
Got it.
We'll see. I'm
Oh wow.
Oh wow. Interesting. I'm actually surprised that it. So we got character in a wheelchair, and they look like they're kind of beaten up, or ChatGPT just sucks at generating that face. Okay, how do you feel about this?
Wow, I love it. I think they did a great job.
Beautiful. So we're going to use this one. I'm going to generate one more so that way our viewers can have two to pick from.
Love that.
Please generate another image with the same specifications as the previous one, but in a completely different style.
Nice.
Let's see what it gives us. I always like to give our viewers, give everyone two options so that way you can pick your poison, so to speak.
I love that.
I like this, so I'm going to. I always have to think of the right way to pull it up. All right. We got a very different style. We went from we went from Dark Crusader to evil troll. I like this one. Picked up on LGBT themes over here. I didn't put LGBT into it. I was like, ChatGPT, are you listening to us?
Yeah.
Google is
it's got the raven. The bicolors are in the forest. It's just it really really did hear us.
This actually works like really well for the LGBT. I'm very surprised by this. And I didn't even have to put in anything. Wow. Okay. Well, I know which one I'm picking. So, okay. So let me pull up the second one. Awesome. And then I'm just going to reorient my screen. So ChatGPT, thank you for giving us 2 images that works.
Yes.
Actually, let me. All right. And then it's a matter of like I have to Tetris them so that way they can actually all work. Sometimes I can get them perfectly and sometimes I can't. With my normal writing sprints, it's easy because I only have the word processor and the timer.
Right.
But with these ones, I'm like, okay, I have to get 2 images and the word
Oh my
processor
god.
and the timer. So this one's a little bit more of like sometimes I can get it and
There you go.
perfect. And then
nice.
And we want
That's
to.
actually really good.
There we go. Making sure we can try to like get as much. Oh. All right. So I think that's good because we get the majority of this one and this one. That's good for both of them. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then I'll throw that out. So for any of you who want to join along, this is a live 20-minute writing exercise. Let me throw up the banner. And let's see. So we got writing exercise. So this is going to be a 20-minute free write using an AI generated images inspiration. I have this right here. So I have the timer. I'm going to throw up the my music. Holly, I've been using the same like music playlist for like the past 2 months. I finally created a brand new playlist this week. Courtesy of AI. Awesome. So once again, if you're feeling super inspired and you want to join us in today's free write, pull up a pen, pull up your word processor, and let's write. Remember, the goal of this isn't to create something crazy. It's just to have fun. Mm-hmm. Whether you create a scene or a story, maybe it leads on to something greater. Maybe it is the worst thing you've ever written, but I'd rather you write 1 word than 0. So let's get into it and we will see what we write. I'll read mine, whatever I write at the end. Holly, you're welcome to as well. If any of you want us to like read what your story is, I can drop my email if you want to send it after the free write. Okay, so I got 20 minutes on the clock. Let me throw up the music. So we got 20 minutes and it's time right now.
hero song, destiny to see. Stand and rise, face the dark, light the skies, leave your mark. Eyes on the prize, heart beats hard, dreams to realize. Play every card, the wind whispers brave, the stars guide the way. No soul left to save. Time to make
All right, writing timer, writing sprint up. Wonderful. Woof. Man, Holly, how did that writing sprint treat you?
Oh, that was good. I was looking at the time. I was like, oh, I better hurry up. I'll end this on a cliffhanger.
I know. I was like, I think I did a setting. I feel so proud when I can write a fully told story in a sprint,
Yeah.
and I don't think I was able to get the full story this time around.
Oh.
I was like, I think I did enough of a setup, but it's interesting. I'm not even sure how it came out.
No, I'm excited to hear it.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. We gotta turn that off. Perfect. So I'll read through mine, and then you're more than welcome to read yours if you'd like. Let me just touch on the comments. If any of you joined us in our live writing exercise and you want me to read through whatever you just wrote for this writing exercise, I'll drop my email in the chat, Kauffman at the-creative-ghost.com. Shoot me an email if you want me to read through your writing exercise that you just came up with. It's probably better than mine. I was like, I feel like I think I had a start, but I don't think I actually got to where I wanted to. Okay. So what is that just blew up for some reason. Nope. Okay, let's see. And then whenever I do these, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll come up with a name now. This story is titled Troblin Lost.
Nice.
Troblin. Let's go Troblin Lost. There we go. So we're going to see that. All right. So he had been wandering through this accursed forest for days, weeks, millennia, exaggeration, suck it, with no end in sight. The ever-changing forest that surrounded him was hopelessly predictable by this point. The Troblin lifted up a foot as fire spit up from the earth straight into the air. He sidestepped as the nearest tree shot forth waves of flame at his previous position. His ashen, oaky right hand reached out to catch a ruby diamond, which plummeted to the sky. Like the trillion other rubies, it went pocketed into the never-ending satchel planted firmly on his back. He continued on as his foot passed across the red twilight forest into the enchanting blue woods. Sighing in pure boredom, Troblin hopped up 10 feet into the air as he clung to a tree branch with one hand, and the ground erupted with a blast of windy death. His free hand counted down from 5. Landing on the ground, his trek continued. The whistle that left his lips was one of boredom and mockery. He flipped off the world with both middle fingers. Suck on that, Pops, now who was the richest Troblin in all the lands. A lost Troblin is not a wise Troblin, he imagined the old troll lecturing him. Troblin spit, his long, willowy tongue flapping in the wind as a blast of cold air tore through the ground apart around him. His grassy loincloth simply flew up and then down. How boring. At this rate, stop there, monster, warned a young feminine voice like silk dipped in honey. Troblin planted a fist to either side as a smile lit up his face. Why, hello there, Wheels. So kind of you to visit. A smirk followed up on his face. Asshole, do you even know how rude that is? The feminine one warned. She planted her writing chair directly in the middle of the multicolored path. Her skin and olive complexion, unlike the others of her kind, that Troblin recalled from a lifetime past. One hand grasped the wheel firmly, while the other pointed a thin wooden stick at him. Rude? What is rude, feminine one? Troblin laughed. Me no rude, me handsome. Troblin's wide-toothy grin looked more menacing than welcoming, and his large yellowish eyes did no favors. I am not defined by this chair, thank you very much. And hey, stop, don't come any closer, she cried out, pointing the wooden stick at him. Troblin hopped off the stump into the wooden path, approaching the feminine one. He sniffed the ground nearby, then sniffed her with his overly sensitive nostrils. I swear, I shoot to kill, and I don't miss, she warned. You shoot, I shoot. We all fall down, Wheels, Troblin joked. Ah, I said don't call me that, monster. How monster different the insult than Wheels, good point. He held out an arm. And that's
that was so good.
I think my goal was to wrap up the story and them like shake hands and then for their hair to change and to get the colored hair. And for them to both be lost in the forest.
That's so good. I love that. I love the voice. It's wonderful.
I know. Whenever I do readings, I'm like, I always have to challenge myself. How can I give every character its own unique voice? Sometimes it works well. unless I'm reading a writer's story and there's an accent, then I'm like, oh, yeah, it's going to come across not the way I intend.
Yeah, I loved that so much.
Awesome. So with that one, did you want to share what you wrote, Holly?
Sure, why not?
Woo! Okay, so let me.
This is my first time doing this. I'm not sure what my title is, but anyways, I did the prompt on the left. Gina knew she shouldn't have run away from home. Besides the burrs sticking to her jacket and mosquitoes flying past her ear, she was wondering if she was in over her head. Her hands became slippery as she pushed the mud-slicked wheels of her wheelchair onward. That any place was surely better than going back to school. Mom and Dad were forcing her to go, but she refused to deal with her ignorant classmates any longer. If her parents didn't believe her that they made fun of her in gym class, shunned her in group projects, and called her weird, she'd go live somewhere else where she could make real friends. The forest behind her backyard was the perfect escape. With a bag of her allowance money and what she saved from Graham and Pop's birthday cards, she had enough money to catch the 5:02 bus at the station beyond the foliage. The path was a little more rugged than Gina remembered. Before she'd gotten in the car accident that caused her spinal cord injury 5 years ago, she used to run between the trees and brush. Now everything looked foreign. She wheeled herself under a particularly dense set of trees, the dim light of the setting sun poking through the branches. Here there was a fork in the road with 2 paths she could take. But which one was the way to the bus station? Gina inhaled deeply, closing her eyes to reminisce on her childhood escapades. Left, then right, then left again. Ah, so left it is, she said, starting forward. The dirt path she wheeled through seemed familiar at first, though as time passed, sweat dripped down Gina's brow. The trees here were thicker than she remembered, and the smell was more like rotting tree trunks and moss than the grassy scents she was used to. Shoot, she exclaimed as she approached a fallen tree trunk in the middle of the path. Well, guess my memory was wrong. Gina bit her lip, switching her hand placement to start to turn around. It's you. Sorry. A scratchy voice rasped from the depths. Who's there? Gina asked, frozen in place. Gina, the mysterious voice let out. Gina's hair stood on end. She dared to look back, to turn to who was calling for her. There stood a 6-foot-tall cloaked figure. It was so dark she almost didn't see him. She couldn't tell what the person was, if it was even a person at all. Leave me alone, Gina yelled, her heart threatening to beat through her chest. I thought you wanted to leave that place, it said. I do, but not with you. I can help you. I can help you become stronger than any of those kids at school. I can give you powers beyond your desires. Here, come with me. The cloaked figure reaches out a hand, palm wide open. Gina chewed the inside of her cheek. Should she believe this guy? It looked like Gina's future was hers for the taking. So I had to end it really quickly.
Woo! Awesome. Woo! That was awesome. I absolutely loved how you were saying that I did the voices, but you actually got your like character voice down.
I was like, oh shoot, I gave him a raspy voice.
That was a lot of fun. I love that you took it, that you went with the left one and you went in a little bit more of like a dramatic direction.
Yeah.
It's weird because I don't usually write comedy.
Oh
But
my
I
God.
like the right one. I was like, all right, I think I'm just gonna try to do like a comedic character.
I never would have guessed because you did it so well.
I think I just try to channel the inner Yoda. I was like, that's the character type I'm going for. But yours was awesome. I love that you got like it worked that you got like the dark. It's like the dark evil benefactor character with our young hero. Very interesting. I loved it.
Thank you.
And then anyone here in the stream, you saw it here when both these stories go on to become bestsellers in the future. Right here on the Creative Right Now podcast.
Waiting for the Troblin.
Troblin will return. I was like, I saw the character and I'm like, okay, so he's a troll. No, he's a goblin. All right, he's gonna be a Troblin.
Wait, so you made that up? That was brilliant.
Yeah, I just like made that up. I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna create a fantasy character that's a cross between a troll and a goblin.
Yes! Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
I was like, I think that's what it's going to be. And I think the story is he's just lost in these like color changing woods. I was like, that's about as far as I got. Maybe it just meets random characters. I just thought that was funny.
That's so cool.
When you do a free write, how do you like come up like what type? So when you see the inspiration, what type of like story usually comes to mind? Do you think more like plot first, or do you think like, oh, that's a character, let me do a character journey? What's your style?
Yeah, I'm a character. I'm like character driven. So like
Mhm.
usually if I come up with a story, it's like a character and like a minor like thing with the plot. But because she
Mhm.
was in the woods, I was like, well, why is she in the woods? And so then I just built on it from there. I was just like, well,
Well,
pretty
I
much
love that. That was really cool.
thanks.
I I know we got some, couple appreciation for both of our stories, which is super cool.
Yay. Yay.
Uh, like the Troblin. It's like, I don't
Yes.
know where Troblin came from.
That was perfect.
Oh my goodness. So that was awesome. I'm glad that we were both able to get a little writing sprint in. Um, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I
As
loved it.
I look forward and I look towards what's next, this comes to this part of the stream where I think about creative writing on the morrow. So first off, I want to say that if you're watching the live stream or you've been here throughout the experience or you're watching on the replay, thank you so much for joining us. Holly, I've had an incredible time chatting with you through both
Yeah.
the disability conversation, the LGBT conversation, and everything else in between. It has been a great experience. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, inviting me to be on your podcast. This was so much fun. It was a pleasure like talking with you and like your community and having my community pop in too and find
Right?
you.
It was kind of cool
Yeah,
seeing like two different communities. And like that was actually really awesome, by the way.
yes.
And this is a shout out to you here in the live stream. Thank you for joining in on the conversation. Thank you for dropping comments. Thank you for being involved because you guys inspire me. I assume inspire us. And it just makes this a more rewarding experience. And make sure that if you jumped into the live stream, whether you jumped into it late or if you caught this on the replay, make sure to go back to the beginning and check out the part that you missed out. I'm going to add time codes so that way you can hop to the part of the conversation that brings you the most value. And also make sure that if you do the writing sprint, you can shoot me an email or you can send Holly an email. As I point to the right side of the screen, like I always
No,
have
I'm
to like,
always
nope,
the
nope.
wrong way.
There we go. There. Or point to or shoot Holly an email and we'd be happy to take a look at your writing sprints. Like that would be so cool. We
Yes.
both do weekly writing sprints. Holly, your writing sprints are on Monday, right? Monday is your main writing sprint
Mhm.
day. My writing sprints are every day because I'm a weirdo.
Love
So
it.
I post my schedule on my Kaufman's Corner YouTube channel, on Facebook, on all the socials. I'm everywhere and nowhere at the same time. If you stayed with us this far and you're looking for something to watch next, down in the YouTube video description is the Creative Right Now podcast playlist. So if you want to go check out other episodes, there's some great stuff there. Last week we did an episode on how to get your first book published. It was super cool.
Ooh.
Oh my God, with the writing of that company, like Yasmin knew what she was talking about. Like I thought
Nice.
I knew things, and I was like, wow, like I was like, I know nothing.
You
I
can
just hear
always
in my head,
learn.
you know nothing, Jon Snow. I'm like, yeah, there's more.
Unfortunately, writers can always learn something, which is like, oh,
We're but students of life.
yes.
And if you want to know more about Holly, once again, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, at hollydavisbooks.com, and my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Woo! Pre-order a copy.
bookshop.org. Yeah, wherever,
Pre-order a
pretty much
copy.
anywhere.
And remember, you get the character cards, you get some additional things for pre-ordering it. Those character cards are really cool.
Yay.
So you get the additional things for pre-ordering. So make sure you pre-order the book, which is coming out. You said November
5th.
November 5th.
Yes.
Remember.
Yes. You won't forget. Also, a big thing is happening on that day. It's the election day. So
You're like,
you won't
oh,
forget.
your book's launching on election. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, remember to vote and
Wow.
buy my book. Yes.
Wow. So
Yeah.
are you going to wow, that's talk about like a whole marketing strategy. So you're
Yeah.
gonna like market it and be like, all right, so if you voted this way, you should buy the book. But if
I
you
say-
voted this way, you should definitely not buy the book.
I was gonna say, if you need a break from political talk, you can read my book instead.
That's actually a much smarter decision. That's a much better decision. Since we know the internet, the US, actually the full internet will be on fire on that day, regardless of what happens. So that's awesome. Pre-order the book. Thank you all for joining us today. You guys are awesome. This has been a great podcast experience, but don't forget, tap that like button on your way out. Let us know that you got value from the stream. Tap the like button. Help us show the algorithm that writing streams are cool and that Holly is awesome.
Aw,
If you appreciate Holly being here, hit that like button. We really appreciate it. And that, my friends, is all that I got for you today. Holly, thank you again. And remember, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman and Holly, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.